All right, welcome back. Today, we are jumping headfirst into one of the biggest, most dramatic, and most debated prophecies in the entire Bible, the identity of the two witnesses from the book of Revelation. Seriously, this is a mystery that has had people talking for centuries, so let's get right into it and see if we can unmask these figures.
So, this is the central question, isn't it? For literally thousands of years, people have been asking, who are these two? They show up on the world stage during this time of incredible chaos, armed with unbelievable power and a mission straight from God. We're going to act like detectives today, sift through the clues, and really explore the major theories.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to open up the case file on the witnesses themselves, what the Bible actually says about them. Then we'll investigate the prime suspects, and let me tell you, there are some legendary names in the running. After that, we'll look at a really interesting alternative theory, decode a symbolic blueprint from the Old Testament, and finally land on the ultimate takeaway.
Okay, first things first. Before we can even start guessing who they are, we've got to understand what they do. So let's open up the official case file as it's laid out for us in Revelation chapter 11.
The first key detail is the length of their mission. Revelation 11 tells us they will prophesy for 1,260 days. Now think about that. That's about 3.5 years. So this isn't some quick flash-in-the-pan appearance. This is a long, sustained, and incredibly powerful ministry, all happening during a time of massive global turmoil.
And their power, it is just off the charts. We're not talking about subtle miracles here. The Bible says they can call down fire, literally stop the rain from falling, turn water into blood, and hit the earth with any plague they choose. The message is crystal clear. While they are on their mission, their authority is absolute. No one can stop them.
But their story has this incredible, dramatic arc. After their 3.5-year ministry is complete, they are finally killed by the figure the Bible calls the Beast. And in a really shocking twist, the world actually celebrates their deaths. But that's not the end, not even close. 3.5 days later, God breathes life back into them, and they rise up and ascend into heaven as their enemies watch in terror. It's an amazing sequence: prophecy, martyrdom, and then this ultimate divine vindication.
So with that incredible story laid out, who on earth could fit the bill? This is where our investigation really kicks into high gear. Scholars have zeroed in on a few key suspects from biblical history.
All right, let's look at the prime suspects. You've got two leading theories here featuring some real heavy hitters. In one corner, you've got Moses and Elijah, and the evidence for them is pretty compelling, right? The witnesses' powers are a direct echo of their most famous miracles, Moses with the water to blood, Elijah calling down fire. Plus, both of them showed up with Jesus at the Transfiguration, and Jewish tradition has long expected their return. Then in the other corner, you have Enoch and Elijah. The main argument here is that neither of these guys ever actually died a natural death. They were just taken straight to heaven. So since the Bible says it's appointed for humans to die once, the thinking is they have to come back to fulfill that destiny.
But hold on. What if we've been looking in the wrong place this whole time? Let's dive into a really different theory, one that says you don't need a famous name to do God's work.
This is a fascinating possibility to consider. What if their identity is left a secret on purpose? This theory suggests that maybe, just maybe, our focus shouldn't be on the people, but on the incredible power of God that's working through them. And the case for this is pretty strong, First off, the book of Revelation never actually tells us their names. It's a huge detail to leave out if they're famous. The argument is that God can give these kinds of miraculous powers to any two believers he chooses. This view really shifts the focus away from human fame and puts it squarely on God's sovereign ability to use ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Suddenly their mission is everything, and their personal resumes mean nothing.
Now, to really get to the bottom of this, we have to do a little bit of detective work and look back, way back, to the Old Testament. There's a vision in the book of Zechariah that acts as a kind of symbolic blueprint. It gives us a massive clue about the true function of these two witnesses.
Okay, so before we dive into that vision, let's just make sure we're on the same page with this word prototype. In the Bible, a prototype is like an early model or a symbol that points to something bigger that's coming later. Think of it like biblical foreshadowing, and Zechariah's vision is a major prototype for the two witnesses.
So in his vision, the prophet Zechariah sees two olive trees that are constantly dripping oil into a golden lampstand, and he asks, what does this mean? An angel explains that the two trees represent two anointed ones, who at that time were the high priest Joshua and the governor Zerubbabel. And the oil? That symbolizes a continuous, non-stop supply of God's Spirit and power fueling the lampstand, which represents God's work in the world. So that's the big clue, right? That prototype tells us something crucial about their function. It suggests that whether the witnesses are legendary heroes, like Moses and Elijah, or just two unknown believers, their fundamental role is exactly the same. They are meant to be vessels, conduits through which God's divine power flows to get his work done. They aren't powerful on their own. They are empowered by God.
And that brings us to our final section, and honestly, probably the most important insight from this whole investigation. After sifting through all these theories, what is it that really, truly matters?
You know, a lot of biblical scholars land on this piece of wisdom. At the end of the day, while it's fun and interesting to guess who they might be, it's not a core issue of faith. The Bible probably doesn't name them for a reason, and the best way to approach this whole topic is with a healthy dose of humility.
It really boils down to this: their purpose, to be God's empowered messengers, to testify to his truth, and to show his power to the world. That is so much more important than their names or their backgrounds. What really matters is their function inside of God's grand plan.
So we'll end on this thought. Maybe the mystery is the point. By leaving them anonymous, the Bible invites us to look past individual heroes and think about what they represent: the unstoppable, enduring power of God's testimony in the world, carried out by anyone he chooses to anoint for his purpose. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.